Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Junkies Podcast. Today is episode 250, and if all went right, I'm on my way to Atlanta, Georgia for FabTech 2022, which I'm sure is going to be a great event. I am entirely booked this week for recording several episodes, so be sure to tune in for special guests like Jeremy Condry with Southern Weld Company, Ray Ripple, Ivan Ilar, Justin Voss, Dusty James, Mark Winchester, Dabs Wellington, and many more. I've been looking forward to this show and seeing firsthand the new tools and technology that are coming out in our industry. It should make for an awesome week. In this week's episode, I'm talking with Dr. Jason Scales, Director of Global Education with Lincoln Electric. Today we discuss how and why Lincoln Electric jumped in and took the lead to host the 2022 World Skills Welding Competition when it was getting ready to be canceled. We'll get right into it right after a quick word from the folks that keep the lights on in the BuzzBox studios. Real quick, if you're enjoying the Junkies podcast, please leave a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It really helps the show out. And please be sure to share the show with anyone who's interested or passionate about welding. Today's episode of the Junkies podcast is brought to you by Outlaw Leather. Outlaw has once again stepped up their game. They're now making their own shells for their hoods. That's right, the shells they were previously using are no longer available, so Outlaw's making their own. The first batch is going to be made in the UK to keep up with current demand, but after that, they're going to be made 100% right here in the USA. The hoods will be available in fixed or flip-up lenses and still meet ANSI, ISEA, Z87, and CSA Z94 requirements. Swing on over to outlawleather.com to pick up a hood today and save 15% when you use Junkies at checkout. Or you can place a custom hood order by sending an email with your design and specifications to info@outlawleather.com. And if you're in the Pasadena, Texas area, pop into their showroom and see their supplies firsthand. They have everything you need to outfit your tool belt or toolbox, regardless of which part of the welding industry you're working in. From the pipeline to the skyline and to everything in between, Outlaw's got you covered. We're also brought to you by Rockmount Research and Alloys. Weld with confidence with Rockmount, knowing that the repair you're making is going to last. If you're a maintenance welder, you probably see the same repairs on a daily basis. Things fail, whether it's planned obsolescence, engineering flaws, abuse on the equipment, or just normal wear and tear. But when you make the repair, you want it to last because time is money. That's why you need to add Rockmount to your arsenal. These rods and wires are specifically designed to weld in the harshest environmental conditions and give you the best results so you can get the job done right the first time, every time. Check out their website, rockmountwelding.com, and see their full list of maintenance rods and wires. And while you're there, you can save 10% on all their abrasives, bits, and blades when you use Junkies 10 at the discount box at checkout. Weld stronger so your repairs can last longer with Rockmount. All right, you know what time it is. Fire up your machine, drop your hood, and turn me up 5.
You're listening to the Junkies Podcast, helping you make every weld better than your last with each episode. And now your host, Jason Becker.
Joining me today is Dr. Jason Scales, the Director of Global Education for Lincoln Electric. Dr. Scales, thanks for having me out.
Hey, thanks for having us, and welcome to the Welding Technology Training Center here in Cleveland, Ohio.
Appreciate the invite. So you guys took over for World Skills kind of last minute. What happened with that whole issue?
Well, it's an interesting story. You know, you think about World Skills. We've been a global industry partner of World Skills now since 2011. And what that means is that when World Skills has a World Skills event that happens about every other year, it was in the odd years, then that wicked thing called COVID happened, switched it to an even year event. And what the challenge was this year is that China just couldn't seem to get over it. And we still had a lot of challenges in China. And at the end of the day, the event in Shanghai was canceled. And that determination was made early June of 22. And then World Skills says, look, it's been a while since we've had an event. It was 2019 the last event occurred, and we need to get our nations together. We need to get these competitors together. They have been practicing. They have been getting set to go to Shanghai. So how can we look at this thing differently, and is there a way that we can have these different events going on around the world? And we here at Lincoln Electric didn't even resist a chance and just rose our hand right away and said, look, as a global industry partner here for welding and the space that we have here in Cleveland, Ohio, we are happy and excited to be able to opportunity to say we'll volunteer to host Skill 10 and Skill 42.
That's really cool. And I bet it means a lot to a lot of the competitors. I don't know if you've had a chance to talk to them yet, but I know that there's an age cap, and some of them may have aged out, had they not been given this opportunity.
Oh, that's right. I mean, think about it. So, we're kind of old dogs here at this new trick, right? And we've been in this game for quite a while. And if I look back to when I was 18 or 17 and even in my younger 20s, and you're practicing and you're focused on your skill and your craft, and you know that you're going to have this opportunity to go to this world-class event where you're going to get to exhibit against somebody else that's been practicing just as much as you are to define your position as a competitor within the world stage. And then to find out that all that time, all that experience, and all that practice you focused on, well, sorry, folks, we're not going to be able to do it this year. We're probably not even going to be able to do it ever. So thanks for all your help. Thanks for all the work you put into it, but let's try again another time. And that's just a crushing thought.
Mm-hmm. So what did it take for Lincoln to commit to this, to hosting this thing? Because there's a lot of money that's wrapped up into it. There's a lot of logistics. Time, resources, material, manpower. How easy was it to just go up to the powers that be and say, hey, we shut down the weld school for almost 2 weeks to set up for this event?
Right. Well, I guess it's not knowing what you don't know. That's what helps, right? Because if we would have known at the end of the day, we're honored to do it. We didn't even think about it. We absolutely rose our hand and said, we're going to do it. We're going to make it happen. We're focused. We're dedicated to this thing, and we're honored to do it. And absolutely, if we did it again, are we going to do some things different? Absolutely. Did we learn from this? Sure we did. But you know what? I'm looking at this saying we learned a lot from this event. And what I also learned is here in the U.S., we should probably think about supporting an international welding competition. Now, we certainly don't want to do it in the years when World Skills is happening and all that, but could we have an off-year event where participants can come participate in a welding competition in the U.S. that's an international base? And think, what I think about that is, what is the opportunity to the young people that are practicing or going through the community college welding programs, career and technical education welding programs at the high school level? We have Skills USA, wonderful event. We get everybody from around the United States to participate. But where's that next step? If I want a little bit more, if I want to be a little better, where's that next step and who can I compete against? And what can I see? Because I think having this event here in the United States, I have heard nothing but oohs and ahs and wow. I didn't know that people could weld that good. Oh my gosh, look at that guy cut that with a flame, not a bandsaw.
I was walking by looking at some of the pieces they're submitting, and even some of the the scraps, the offcuts. It looks like their handmade oxy-fuel cuts were done with a saw, and the root passes look like they were done with an orbital TIG welder. And I mean, some of this stuff is just mind-blowing, the level of precision and accuracy and uniformity of these welds.
Absolutely. And we think about the spirit of the event, right? So the spirit of the event, when it started back in, and we were talking back in the 60s, right? When Spain and Portugal got together and said, hey, I think you're training your people a little better than me, so let's have a competition and see who's really better. And if you beat me, I really want to know what you did that made that competitor better and beat my competitor. And we call that a benchmarking activity, right? Mm-hmm. Well, here we have all these people coming in from the world stage, and I really think I'm a good welder. Man, I'm an ace. Look at me weld. And then all of a sudden you see a competitor from the Southeast Asia region around the world that, as you say, looks like a robot made that weld, and you're thinking, oh my lands, there's no way I can make that weld. Well, now you have a new target. You have a new goal to meet. And is it good for us to do that? Absolutely, right? I mean, when we used to build projects or build things all the time, and you do it yourself, when I do it, I look at somebody else's project and think, oh, crap, now I got to go back to the shop and try this one again. Yeah. And maybe I'm asking, like, hey, Becker, can you come over here and help me do this? What techniques, what did you do when you made that weld to kind of get that little figure eight pattern? Why did you do that, and how does that work, and what are you doing here? And when you can share that, and you have all those instructors talking back and forth, it's an amazing experience.
I think it's cool just like as an industry to watch, like you said, it's a benchmark. And every odd year or every other year when they do Skills USA or World Skills, you're raising that benchmark continuously. Because I guarantee you the welds that they're cranking out now didn't look like they did 10 years ago. It's probably leaps and bounds ahead. So they're probably getting better every single time they run this competition, and probably harder and harder to grade.
Well, absolutely. And here's the other thing. Think about this. Industry is moving faster than I think what education can really keep up with.
Yeah, 100%.
Right?
Yeah.
And so when I think about welding education, I think about welding in general. I go back to the days when I taught ag, right? If you go back way back when, early 1900s, you went to school and you wanted to go get a degree in agriculture, what'd you get?
A degree in agriculture.
Yeah, you're going to be a farmer,
Yeah.
right? And they had some other specialty degrees, but you're going to be a farmer. If you go to the College of Agriculture today and say, I'm going to be a farmer, there's probably not a degree program that says I'm going to be a farmer.
No,
You're
it's
going to
probably more specialized.
Right, you're going to go into agronomy, soils, forestry, and all that. I really think we're at a pinnacle age right now with welding, that welding is maturing as an industry. Welding is maturing in this market space that I really think we're going to start seeing. I'm going to specifically train you for a specific path. I'm going to train you with a specific set of skills that's going to meet that workforce need. You know, because if you think about workforce development today, it's changing. The landscape is changing. If AWS says we need 300,000 welders by 2025, it's mathematically impossible for a school to do it.
Yeah.
So, all right. So how
Even
how
collectively across the U.S. And
Absolutely.
Then to keep them all to bring them all up to the same skill level at the same time.
Right.
It's impossible.
Right. So what does that mean, and how are we really going to start fixing this and doing these things? And I think you're going to start hearing these conversations about in schools, you know, short-term certificates, on-ramps, off-ramps, back in and out of education. And you think here at World Skills, and what I'm looking at here at World Skills and what we're seeing, a lot of these students that are participating are apprentices working in the industry of welding. And that industry is saying we need this level of skill. We need this level of performance. And we're investing in this to make this happen. And I think that's an interesting model, because if you're going to go weld a ship together, you probably want the weld to be pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
You want to put your best guy on that.
That's
one.
right. If I'm going to weld a submarine together, I really don't want that tube to come apart when I'm down in the water.
Ideally. Yeah.
Right?
That's the goal.
So they are focused on that quality and how well that weld can be made and how many times it can be replicated so you don't have to dig it out and do it again, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's an interesting model we can look at, but going back to that thread of what is welding education going to look like in the future, and how are we going to start skilling up workforces, and how are we going to start building these skills and these people quicker? You know, we talk about here, we're looking at the best of the best from around the world. They are the best. We have 22 competitors that are the best in the world. Now you've set a new benchmark for what everybody thinks they can achieve. And if you ask some of these competitors or even students that are walking through these aisles, they're thinking, I never can weld that good. And then they see somebody do it. All right, now it's possible. And that's when we start transforming what we're doing. When a teacher can see a student actually doing a flame cut that has no dross on the bottom side, and it looks like you cut it with a plasma, like a say a bandsaw or something. Now it's possible.
Yeah, I wish I would have been able to witness that cut. I was in here doing a recording, and I guess they'd already got all their pieces cut out. But I want to see that technique. I want to see that method. I mean, how do you do something like that? Because it literally looks like they put it on a track torch and cut the piece. Even better than the track torch. And these are radius pieces. And it's not like they're using templates and stuff.
Well, you're just like me. When I was out on the farm or doing something else, as long as that metal hit the ground.
Yeah, it was a good cut.
Man, that was great. Great cut.
Least grinding I got to do, the better the cut is.
No matter all that stuff that was hanging off the bottom of that piece of metal. These guys are making precision cuts. And then they're measuring that with precision instruments to make sure that it's square, that it's right, that the measurement is right. And that's when people start thinking, wow, I need to hold a higher standard when I go back to the school. I mean, these guys are killing it out there.
Yeah, I got to speak with the panel earlier this morning of the past USA competitors that have all medaled since I guess 1993, and I mean, great group of guys. But they were saying the same thing. We got to start getting this level of education spread out across all the different programs. Whether it's high school or technical colleges or vocational schools or trade schools or anything like that. We got to start bringing this skill level up and getting everybody on the same page. And there's got to be a way to do it.
Well, I think you did right, and I think one of the things we got to think about is how you might make a tiered system. How do you earn your way to that next level? You know, it's okay to say most of your students that are in welding education programs will probably participate in a regional or a district level event, right? You're going to get the masses participating at that event. Well, that's great. There's some then degree of excellence they have to have that they then go to the regionals. There's another degree of excellence they have to go to state, and then another degree to go to nationals. How are we separating that herd as we keep that momentum going up to the national level? And then how is industry having any impact in that they're buying into it, that they're truly buying into it? And I'll tell you, Jason, one of the things we're going to have, and I don't know how we're going to pull it off, I don't know when we're going to pull it off, but I think one day we're going to have a skills draft. And when we think about a skills draft, you know how we have the NFL draft? And then you got the baseball draft and all that? Well, think about this. If we have students coming to an event like this, and we'll put 50 skills out here, right? And you bring in industry and say, look, I want this welding contest to happen. We're going to have the highest degree of excellence here. And then I want you to interview these students. And then if you find the perfect welder you want, I want you to bid on the number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5 draft pick. And we're going to auction off these draft picks. And then we're going to announce to the world that Jason Becker, the number 1 draft pick, is picked by whatever company, and they just paid $30,000 to make sure they got Jason Becker because he's the number 1 draft pick in welding. Think how powerful that would be to tell parents and to tell schools and to tell educators that excellence pays off, and these trades and these skills are valued enough by companies they're willing to draft people into this and actually pay back to those schools for developing that kind of excellence.
Yeah, that was kind of one of the things that I was disappointed at, just coming to my first World Skills event. Everything else has been top notch. It's been a great event so far. Where's all the employers? Where is industry to come here and say, hey, I want you to come work for me because you have that level of precision. The amount of work, time, effort, blood, sweat, and tears that it took to get here just to be able to perform, for a couple of days in these fabrication projects or, the welding event. I want you to come work for me. I realize you got a job right now. I realize you're in somewhere else in the U.S., but I'm going to pay you this to come work for me. And very similar to what you said, you're my number 1 draft pick. You should have a line out the door with all the industry that's like complaining, oh, we can't find anybody decent. We can't find anybody that shows up. We can't find anybody that puts in the work. Meanwhile, these people out here are putting in 16, 17, 18, 19-hour days for months and months and months on end just to come out here and compete. Imagine what they could do. You put a set of blueprints in front of them and say, hey, man, I just need you to work 40 hours a week for me, or maybe 50. We'll throw in some overtime every once in a while. Make it worth their while for something more than a competition at the end of the day. And I was speaking with one of the gentlemen from Germany. They're having the same problem in Germany, with trying to find skilled labor. Skilled labor is at a premium right now. Nobody can find it. It's 2 doors down.
Right. Everybody, it's a systemic problem across the world, right? I was in Europe a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about in Ireland World Skills, the exact same challenge that we have in the U.S. is the exact same challenge they have in Ireland. Exact same challenge they have in Ireland, in Germany and in the UK, and all over the world. And, shamefully, what we do a lot of times in education, we're not 100% aligned with industry, nor the expectations, nor what they need or how things are going, right? And industry, yes, industry screaming from the mountaintop, give me the most skilled person, give me better people, give me this and give me that, I'll hire them all day long. But we're in a perplexing situation because, again, there's not enough access to high-quality talent in the workforce right now, the available workforce. In the U.S., we're, 3.5% unemployment?
Yeah.
3.5%. And then now we start talking about first-generation workers entering the workforce, that they're first-generation workers, right? And that support system. And I think, but what your point is, it's going to take the village to raise the child here. And the child of workforce is there, and every player needs to come to the table to start talking about this challenge and this issue. And I think that's really where the magic can happen.
No, 100%. But in addition to that, we have to start recruiting these young men and women at an earlier age, because all the high school program, I'm not sure how it is up here in Ohio, but I know like in Florida, there's very few high school programs left that have anything to do with a skilled trades program. When I went through high school, I had welding, wood shop, auto mechanics, auto body, technical drawing and all this stuff. And they started phasing all that stuff out. Now it's math, history, English, social studies. Like your core classes are there, but like your skilled trades, something to introduce you to a pathway to success in life that doesn't involve a college degree and say, hey, you can get into the skilled trades. You gotta start getting them interested earlier. Show like middle school kids, age 12, 13, 14. This is welding. This is carpentry. This is plumbing. This is HVAC, and start nurturing that interest at a young age so they can start on a path to an apprenticeship. I think that's one of the worst things we've done as a society is basically get rid of our apprenticeship programs. I mean, they still have them in the unions, which is a great thing. I went through an apprenticeship program. It was awesome. One of the best experiences of my career because I was taught all the information I needed to know to make me better as an individual at work. Start doing that same thing here. Run through an apprenticeship program. It's what they did back in the medieval times, and it worked out great. They had these big guilds of builders and block masons and blacksmiths, and you had to put in so many hours to advance. We don't have that anymore. We don't have that luxury. And industry's screaming for them. The schools are cranking people out as fast as they can, but they're not up to par because everything's accelerated.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, at the end of the day, I think we've gotten away from some core fundamentals in education. And
100%.
We're sitting here talking about
Many
this.
levels.
You're sitting here saying, well, let's make some vocational tracks and let's get those kids focused in career and tech ed. Well, let's make some other high-end college tracks and get these kids going to universities and college. And, I think back when I was in high school or when I was in school, it wasn't that long ago, but it was okay. It was a long time ago. And, I took everything that I wanted to take. I learned everything I wanted to learn. No question about it. However, I'm a failure in the vocational education system because I took industrial maintenance. That was my vocational education courses that I took. But I'm a failure because I didn't go into that career path after high school. So I took the vocational training, but I didn't go into that line of work. Mm-hmm. However, I have used those skills throughout my life like nobody else has been. I started roofing houses when I was in college just to make extra money. I built my own house, and I can't tell you about the equity we made out of that one. But I used those foundational skills the rest of my life. And I think what we forget a lot of times in education is these career and technical education courses, like the woodworking or like these industrial large, Project Lead the Way, Tech Ed, whatever we want to call them, they actually take what we learn in the classroom and they apply it in a different way. And for some reason, I don't know if we demonized it or if we said not everybody needs to learn it, but when you start adding fractions in the math class, and then you go to the wood shop and you got to start adding fractions because you got a board that's 3/4 of an inch thick, or you've got to do these different things. You start applying where that adding fractions now makes sense, right? And it comes to life. But I really don't care if you're going to be a woodworker. I really don't care if you're going to go into skilled trades. But you actually start learning how to use information and you start learning how to use tools in a different way, and you're applying things in a completely different abstract way. Where's the harm in that?
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break. This segment of the Arc Junkies podcast is brought to you by O2 Armor. Do you know what's going up your nose? Of course you do. Grinding dust, weld fumes, dirt, debris, all kinds of stuff. And you can see it at the end of the day when you blow your nose. And that's just the stuff you can see. You got two choices. You can keep breathing it in, or you can block it. O2 Armor nasal filters block particulate matter down to 2.5 microns. And you can get 10% off at O2Armor.com when you use Arc Junkies 10 at checkout. They have a size chart available on their website, or you can order a sample pack to see which size fits you. That's O2Armor.com. We're also brought to you by Everlast Welders. If you're looking for a great TIG machine, check out the 255 EXT. The 255 EXT comes with more features, better performance, and a better warranty than other machines on the market, but with a lower price point. You can spend more money on a specific color, or you can get a machine with better performance, features, and warranty, all at a lower price point. The 255 EXT is a dual input 120-240 voltage machine, so you can use it at home or on site. It's also capable of AC and DC with pulse up to 500 Hertz on DC and 250 Hertz on AC. Get your machine today at everlastwelders.com, and don't forget to use Arc Junkies in the comment section at checkout to get that free Nova foot pedal and TIG torch upgrade. Everlast Welders. Weld mean, weld green. We're also brought to you by Strong Hand Tools. I worked for years off a cheap table. It's possible to do it, but you know as well as I do, it sucks. And it's time to upgrade, and now's the time to do it. Head on over to stronghandtools.com/promo and get 10% off plus free shipping on all their Build Pro tables, Rhino carts, manipulators, and fixturing kits. That's stronghandtools.com/promo. Take your shop to the next level with Strong Hand. Now let's get back into the show. And if it wasn't for welding, like, I still wouldn't know how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide fractions. I still wouldn't understand the Pythagorean theorem and, like, where it's relevant, or, you know, like, all the stuff that I learned in school that I was like, I was always that one kid in class that raised my hand. When am I ever going to use this? What's the application for this, you know, this thought process behind it? Like, don't worry, you just need to know this for the test.
Yeah.
Why? Why test me if it's not a lifelong skill? But once I went to the welding shop, and it was like, oh, I got to, you know, make a staircase, or I got to make an angle, or I have to, you know, I've got this material, and I got to figure out if I have enough, you know, length of this material to make X amount of pieces. Oh, there's that math. Okay, I just learned this last week in my math class. You start adding it up. Okay, now it's practical. Now I get it because I put my hands on it and it's relevant.
And what's funny is kids always ask me, like, well, how'd you get where you're at? You're the global director of education for Lincoln Electric. And it's funny because I think back about it, and I think back when I was 18 years old and trying to figure out what I was going to do in my life. And you said, you know, when you're older, Jason, you're going to be sitting in a room talking to Jason Becker, talking about being the global education director for Lincoln Electric and all these great countries you went to. I'd have laughed. I'd have farthest thing from my vision would I'd ever be, well, wearing a suit and traveling around the world and doing what we do. And with that frame, I don't know that there's really any 18-year-old that's going to sit there and say, by the time I'm 50, I'm going to be doing X, right? And where do they get all these experiences, and where do they get all these things that actually allows them to find the passion that they have in life or whatever they want to do, and then go after that passion and just drive? Because, you know, when you talk about welding, you talk about woodworking, you talk about, you know, healthcare or anything, you found your passion for it. And once you find your passion, everything else is trivial.
Yeah.
And I think when you allow students and you allow kids to experiment with what they want to learn or where their passions are, for example, if a student goes to the automotive class and takes an automotive class but figures out, I'm not changing oil the rest of my life. That's not, engines and turning wrenches aren't for me. Is that bad?
No.
Absolutely not, right?
No, because they can, you know, they know how to do that skill set. So maybe they're not doing it as a full-time gig, but now they're, you know, changing their own oil in their vehicle, or doing, you know, tune-ups and maintenance and stuff, and saving themselves a little bit of money, or working on their kids' car to, you know, help get them through school and everything, because they can't afford to take it to the mechanic every couple of weeks. Absolutely.
But for some reason, when you go back to the primary education rules, we've said, no, the vocational track's not for you. Don't go take that class. And I'm thinking, well, why not? Let them take every single class they want. Take cooking. Find out I don't really want to cook the rest of my life. Okay, well, better figure out something else.
Or you can feed yourself, because you can't always rely on DoorDash.
Yeah, that's right.
Sometimes the roads get shut down and hurricanes pop up.
Well, we just go to McDonald's. You know, we just live on the McDonald's salad all the time. But it's just, it's a trivial discussion because, again, yeah, we want the smartest kids in the world. We want the most successful kids in the world. We want every kid to find that path and find that passion. But if I don't give you the opportunity to experience everything that I can get you to experience, how are you going to find the passion?
Yeah.
And I tell you, it's really interesting because when you travel around the world and you see the different kinds of education systems, you see the different types of governments where it's very much tracked. Look, sorry, Jason, you didn't get that score on the test. You're over here on this track now. You're not going to school. And I don't know about you, but I probably was not the best student in school.
I definitely wasn't.
No, I mean, I think I was in the principal's office more than I was on the playground. Yeah. And I shouldn't tell so many stories, but there's, you know, back in the day, I think I had the world record for the most demerits in one semester, right? But that's okay. I mean, I was cantankerous, energetic, and mischievous at the same time. But those energies and that curiosity led me to where I am today, right? And I always wanted to know more. You never leave a rock unturned. You always got to figure out, well, if I push this button.
Yeah, what's going to happen? Do not push this button. Well, what happens if I do? I need to find out.
Right. And sometimes things blew up and sometimes things didn't. And that was the coolest thing in the world. I mean, think about when we teach welding. When we teach welding, even when we do that, we always want the student to make the perfect weld. We're always telling them, no, that's not good. No, that's bad. No, that's not this. Instead of saying, well, why don't you go figure it out? Or hell, let's go get another student, sit in that booth with you, and while you're welding, I'm going to crank up that wire feed speed enough. I want you to see what's going to happen when you do that. And then look back to me and tell me, what do you think happened? What happened in that weld right there at that spot? Or voltage. I'm going to have somebody turn that voltage all the way up to 28 while you're welding, and we're going to go all the way down to 2. Tell me what happened. Why did that happen? What happened in that arc? And yeah, we as teachers sometimes think, oh my gosh, you can't let the students play in the booth. You don't let them do that. Why not?
No, you got to let them. You got to let them screw stuff up. I encourage them. Make mistakes.
Yeah.
Twist the knobs, twist the buttons, push the button, see what it does. And I had a conversation with a guy the other day. I said, when Bob Moffitt, when I was working with him, and we'd test out a new machine, we'd go through all the different variables. Okay, here's amplitude. Let's see what it does when we max it out at positive 10. Okay, what's it doing when we max it out at positive negative 10? I encourage my students to do the same thing. Jack up your settings. What's it do?
Yeah.
What is that reaction? Now that you know exactly, you can physically see and feel what that adjustment did when you maxed it out or minimized it. Now you're going to remember that because you've done it. I didn't tell you, because if I tell you, you're going to forget it.
Right.
It's not relevant. It's relevant once you do it and you screw up and you make a mistake.
Yeah, my daughter asked me one time, she's like, Dad, how do you know how to fix so many things? Your dad broke so many things. I had to figure it out.
Broke a lot of stuff when I was a kid. I remember getting a toolkit for Christmas one year, and then I took all the cabinets and drawers apart in the kitchen.
I'll never forget the
locked
first.
out of my toolbox.
I had a Chevy Citation. I don't even remember what those looked like. It was like an egg, but it was a Chevy Citation, and I didn't have enough money to go to a mechanic. They were too expensive, and of course I didn't mind turning wrenches. I like turning wrenches, and so I had to replace the brake booster in my car. I'd never done it before, and so my father, being my father, and he was like, "Look, you want to do that? That's fine. I don't know. I'm out. You can go try it out if you want, but." I'd say we got to take this thing to mechanics. It's only about stopping the vehicle, not about going. So, if you don't stop, there's a lot of consequences to this. Well, what happened was I messed up more switching out the brake booster than I ended up was originally wrong with the car. So I pulled the brake booster out. There was another piece of metal between the firewall of the cab, and the firewall of the engine bay, and the piece of metal slid down. Couldn't figure that part out. Cross-threaded every line going to the master cylinder, and then put the pin in wrong. They went from the brake pedal to the master cylinder. So yes, everybody, do not bring your car to Jason Scales to fix. That's the moral of the story.
Definitely not an auto mechanic.
Right. But I can tell you, I learned more from that experience about a lot of different things. And thinking about it is like when we talk about schools, we talk about education, we talk about getting kids interested in a lot of things. It's that tinkering. It's that, let's just get in there and figure it out. If we mess it up, we can always fix it. There's nothing that can't be fixed, right? It just might cost you a little more money. It might cost you a little more time, but we can do it. And I remember a time my daughter, she wanted a floating bed in her room. You ever heard one of those?
Yeah, I've seen people make those.
Yeah.
Pretty neat.
Yeah, she wanted it. And she's like, Dad, can you make this for me? I'm like, absolutely, I can make it, but you're gonna design it and draw it and help me. And so for a weekend, we made a project together, and she used tape measures, she used the saws and used different things, and she still talks about building that bed and doing that. And is it perfect? No.
Why not?
But is it hers? Absolutely. And I think that's the magic. And when we talk about all these kids in welding and all these kids out here that are, and they're not kids at the end of the day, but these professionals that are here welding in this international welding competition, they took those chances. They took those, they said, you know what, I don't know that I can really reach that pinnacle. I don't know that I can be the best of the best, but I'm going to keep trying every day, and I'm going to get there. And that weld that I just made that looks perfect, I'm going to make it better next time. And I'm going to go compete against somebody else. I'm going to see if I'm better than them, and if I'm not, I'm going to be better than them tomorrow. And I think that mindset that we can build in people, that mindset we can give those kids a target, that, look, you can do this. You can be this. It takes time, but you can do it. That's the magic. Yeah. And I think many times we just don't give those students the opportunity or encourage them to do it.
No, everybody's afraid that they're going to screw up. But you're going to learn more through your failures than you are through your successes. I always have.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't be here today if I didn't fail 100 times already.
Like I said, I encourage students to screw up. Go screw up. It's okay, because then we're going to learn how to fix it, and then we're going to learn how to avoid that mistake in the future.
Yeah.
See what happens when you do it.
Yeah, do you ever mess with your kids in school? Like, you take that ground lug and you kind of like unplug it?
No, I would never. Actually, I would. So I told him, like, day one, I got into teaching, and I said, you always check your machine, because I've had this happen to me out in industry. I go to lunch, somebody used my machine during lunch, it's completely different. You go back, you strike up, and you're like, whoa, those aren't my settings. So they would go to lunch, and I'd switch polarities on them. I'd crank up their balance. I'd drop their balance. I'd mess with everything that I could. Shut their gas off, if they left it on. Switch programs, and they would come back, and like I used to start off with polarity, and had switched all the machines over to DC negative. Everybody's on DC positive, and I would let them weld DC negative and DC positive just so they could hear what it sounds like.
Yep.
And then a couple days later, I would switch the polarities. And I had one student come up to me. He's like, "Mr. Becker, I don't know how it happened, but my machine the polarity was switched when I got back from lunch." And then people are striking up, and they're just welding. He's like, "You hear that? Everybody else's, theirs is off too." I was like, "Just hang out here for a minute." I said, "I want to see how long it takes before everybody else realizes that they're on the wrong polarity." Nobody else did. We had to go booth to booth and say, "Hey, here's what happened." But I would set them up for failure sometimes because, that's life.
Right. Everybody wants the trophy every day, but let's see if we can go earn it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to check your machine over. You go to lunch, you go to break, you come in for the, first shift, especially if you got, second or third shift that come in after you, you got to go over your stuff again.
Right. I've never messed with anybody in the shop. I always hold it straight and narrow, straight as an ace, but it is kind of fun to mess with people every once in a while.
Oh, yeah. Jack up their wire feed speed, voltage, and all that stuff. But, then they see the effects. They see the variables.
Right. Yeah, the funnest class I ever taught was that troubleshooting class, and you go in there and sabotage all the welders, and they got to figure out what's going on with it. There's a lot of mean things you can do.
Oh, yeah.
Now, to the audience, nobody ever got hurt. We're talking, this is like, put some electric tape in between the ground clamp on the table that you really can't see, but there's no full ground, and you wouldn't light up an arc. And,
that's nasty.
Oh, yeah. And it took a while for some of them to find them.
Yeah.
But it was kind of fun.
I had one student. We just got the Aspects 375s in, and I was showing an employer that came through. He asked about the machine. I was like, "Oh yeah, you can do this. You can change the pulse." And so I just walked through all the different settings. Well, when the student came back from lunch, it wasn't done intentionally. I didn't re-zero it back to all the settings that he had. Man, he went to go light up on something and blew a hole right through it. Oh man, he was hot. And I was like, "Hey, I told you day one of class, check your machine every time you turn it on. Did you do that?" "Well, no." Now you know.
Right.
And now I kind of work with him and do side jobs, and every time he fires his machine up, he goes through and checks everything out before he lights up, and then he'll test it out on a piece of scrap before, he does it on an in-service part.
Yeah. It's funny, too, when you work with people and you work in industry, and you learn how to weld, and you learn how to master the weld, master the arc length, or master different things, and shielding gases and stuff like that. Sometimes somebody, we had a welder, and of course it was a bad day, and the welder wasn't operating right. That arc was jumping around, and it was funny. We were doing a demonstration and laid down a perfect bead, and somebody came along the next, and they welded, and it was junk. It was just dot. And they're like, "Well, how do you do that?" I'm like, "Well, aren't you watching the arc? Aren't you watching this and that?" And they're like, "No, I was just putting the bead down." I'm like, "No, you got to manage the arc. You got to manage this, and if you can manage that, you can make the thing weld."
Mm-hmm.
But just in that one little thing, was the power source right? No. But they had to manage the arc and learning how to manage the arc, right? And that's the fine-tuning of an expert versus a novice, or a competent welder versus that excellence in welding. It's all over the board, but again, allowing them to witness messing up, allowing them to experience those things makes them a better tradesman.
Yeah. We had at the school the first school that I taught at, we had a couple old Thunderbolts, and the handles on them, they functioned, but the needle wouldn't show you the exact amperage that you were supposed to get. And so I was like, "Man, we got to throw this thing out." And then I got to thinking, I was like, "No, don't do that," because there's been times out in industry where I had to kind of weld by feel. And you can tell if a 7018 is burning properly. You can feel it, you can see it, you can hear it. And so I was like, use that machine. We're definitely not going to test on that. We're not going to do any performance qualification on it, but get used to being able to do it by feel and sight and sound, because, sometimes that's how you're going to have to do it. You're out on a job site, and, for every 50 foot of lead you stretch out, you got like a 5 amp drop and a 2 volt drop. You're going to have to crank that machine up. So you don't know what you're actually getting at the end until you weld with it, unless you're putting a multimeter on it, which I've seen very few welders walking around with a multimeter. You got to do it by feel and sound.
Right. Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And I think, even us as teachers, and when we think about teaching and how we teach in the classroom today, to your point, we've got to start changing the way we teach our students in the classroom, and how we let them experience welding in the lab, and what we allow them to do. And I think, our students are different. Our people are different. People coming out off the street need to learn welding. They need to learn differently than what we did in the past. And I think, to that point, I think that's probably one of our challenges in welding education. If we're talking about attracting the new workforce, attracting youth to our programs, attracting different people, if we're not doing things that encourage excellence, if we're not doing things that keep it exciting, keep them interested, and keep them engaged in the program, we're not going to have a program.
Yeah.
And I think that's worthy of more discussions. But it's just crazy how, there's technologies out there you can use. There's different teaching techniques you can use. But I remember the first year I taught welding, no way I'd ever teach it like that again, right? But now that we know more, now that we've experienced more, and sharing that and having fun out in the lab, I mean, that's a whole thing about messing up, is you can laugh about it and learn from it. And I think I've had more fun, well, not all the time, but I've had more fun kind of messing up sometimes than not. It's like, holy crap, I never knew it'd do that, you know?
And you learn a lot along the way.
Right.
But I think that's definitely one thing we need to focus on is, that was one of the coolest things that I did for my program was we switched over to a project-based learning because I was cranking out welders. They would lay awesome beads, but then, like hindsight's 20/20. I took a lot of things for granted because that's how I was taught. I was just taught how to weld on 6-inch coupons, grooves, fillets, and everything. And then out the door I went and learned on the job site. Well, now employers are saying that's great. They can weld, but they can't read a tape measure. They can't cut, fit, and fabricate. Yeah, I kind of failed those students. So that's one thing we started doing is project-based learning. Let's go over there and draw something up. We need a quench tank for the shop. Cool, let's build it. I'm not going to go out and buy something like that. I want you three to get into a group. I want you to sketch it out, and then the next group's going to go behind, cut all the parts out, and then we'll tack it all together, and then we'll fabricate it. And then we started incorporating more and more blueprints, and it makes them better at the end of the day because when they walk into a facility, they've got a good idea how to utilize all these different hand tools and methods and pieces of equipment and machinery and everything to do the job the employer's expecting them to do.
Yeah, and that's part of the magic of it, right? And when I think about it, and I go into a wood shop, sometimes you see a whole bunch of metal tables in a wood shop, or you go in a metal shop and see a whole bunch of wood tables. You're like, are you a good fabricator? Because you're buying tables that you should be building, but you're not building the tables. What's going on in here, you know? And it's kind of funny, but you're right. I think students need to experience all those different things like they're going to experience in industry. They have to because, these employers are screaming for a smarter welder. And that's what we're talking about is a smarter welder. Can you use your brain with your hands and then make a product at the end of the day or produce something at the end of the day? And when we start talking about welding education programs, you talk about the 300,000 we need to meet the needs for. There's certainly going to be those entry-level welding positions we need to do. But as you think about the retirements, you think about the evolution of the welding industry and who all is going in, we need those welding technologists. We need the engineering technologists. And I think, where are we going to get that and how are we going to get that? How are we going to build that want for people to keep going up to those next levels? And that's where we keep coming back full circle. That's where these things that are going on here make that difference. People start saying, oh my gosh, that's why it's so important for me to do what you're talking about. It becomes relevant in their brain, and they say, I can be better than that guy. And they set a higher standard and a higher bar, and we just keep marching it up.
Yeah, we got to publicize it a little bit better. The whole time I've been up here in Cleveland, every, establishment I walk into, there's a game going on, whether it's football or baseball or whatever. There should almost be like coverage of this event, not like, behind like a paywall or something like that. Like televise this event, put it on a channel to where people can say, oh, the world skills competition is going on, just like we do with the Olympics. Okay, it's skiing. Okay, this one's bowling. Okay, figure skating over here. Do the same thing. Okay, this is, metal fabrication. This is the welding portion. Okay, over here we got culinary. Show these different things, live as it's happening, or like even in post-production, and, show the world. I think that's one of the coolest things is, Netflix, one of the biggest streaming platforms on earth, they released a show called Metal Shop Masters, which was a pretty decent show. But what it did is it got more people interested in welding. They saw that and they're like, how do I get into that? Because that was really cool. And the next thing you know, enrollment rates are going up in welding schools across the U.S. because of that one show on the streaming system. If we did the same service, that they did for that one show and start televising, the Skills USA and World Skills and like maybe even the national competitions for all these different trades, you're going to start getting people excited about that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and at the end of the day, go out on this floor and take any one of these people out here that are participating in this event and put them on that show and see how well they do. It'd blow the doors off that show.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like the stuff that especially for like a team build fabrication, stuff like Monster Garage and Orange County Choppers. I mean, that got a lot of people interested in welding because they're like, hey, I want to build motorcycles, or, I want to build this, that, and the other thing. It got more people interested, but we got to start pushing and exposing this industry and showing it to people.
Yeah, it all became relevant, right? You actually know where that weld's being applied, and you're like, oh my gosh, I could build a motorcycle tomorrow? Well, I'd not say that, kiddo, but yeah. One day you can, absolutely.
That's how Jesse Serpan got into it. Now he's building custom choppers and stuff. I mean, there's people out there that saw a show and then enrolled into a welding program. I mean, Rush Kane, same thing. He wanted to build chopped bicycles and that, like long chopper style bicycles. So he took a welding program. Look at him now. I mean, he's designing welding machines. It's crazy to see, but he got exposed to it at a young age. Same thing with myself. At age 15, that's when I learned how to weld, and it lit that spark, pun intended, and it kind of ignited my passion for this entire industry. But if I would have went to a school that didn't have that opportunity, I might be an accountant right now, which would really suck for me because I'm dyslexic and I'm not good at math. That'd be a horrible accountant.
But at the end of the day, you bring up something too, true. It's like here in welding, even in Lincoln Electric, I don't need just the welder. I need the computer programmer. Mm-hmm. I need the chemist. There's all these other traits that I need that support the welding industry that we need to talk about as well. Because I think one of the fallacies we talk about in welding is that you're just going to you're going to light an arc and you're just going to lay a bead down the rest of your life. No. This is a stepping stone to a lifelong career within an industry that you can go do anything you want to do in this industry. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things we got to promote, if we really want to get people excited about the industry, is talk about the industry. The actual physical act of welding is just one component in the industry.
Yeah.
So if you're into computers and gaming and all that stuff, I need you at Lincoln Electric. I got a little game thing over here called the Vertex that we need to design to be a better training tool. I need the gamer, but I want you to understand welding too. I want you to experience the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah.
Right? And I need you as an accountant to help me run a better business. I need you in finance. I need you in chemistry because I got to make fluxes and I got to make wires that make welding work. Right? And I think if we start really talking about the industries and why this thing is so important and where you can go in the industry, you'd start blowing the doors off the conversation. But I think sometimes in welding, we speak so much of just the physical act of welding that I wonder who are we deflecting from this industry that could be really dynamic.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the coolest things that you guys actually produce as far as like your visual aids is the welding skills tree. And that's one of the ones that I had, front and center in my classroom or like right outside the door so they could see it and say, everybody in this classroom, I got 15 students. Not, shocker, not all of you are going to be, leave this place and become a welder. But here's all the other stuff you can do. You can get into inspection. You can get into weld engineering. You can get into sales. You can get into equipment repair. You can get into all these different avenues because you understand the welding aspect.
Well, absolutely.
You might not be great at it. Like I had a lot of good students that they were really smart with when it comes to welding, but they couldn't physically do it. And
yeah.
So, you can push them into a different direction, still related to welding.
Yep. And to your point there, one of the things that we think about when we do this thing called welding and we do these things around the world is once you have a skill, nobody's going to take that skill away from you. You got the skill.
Yeah.
You're always going to be employable. You're always going to have a job. You're always going to be able to make money. And I think that's the coolest thing about having a skill.
Oh, 100%. I appreciate you coming on the show here. I know we got to cut it short. You got some stuff to do. You're a busy man.
Absolutely.
But yeah, thanks for coming out and shedding light. And, thank you to Lincoln Electric for putting this event on, so we can host it here in the United States and, make sure that it happened for these young men and women out there.
Absolutely, Jason. Thanks for having me on the show.
Been a pleasure.
All right, bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button on your podcast app. I have a lot of great content heading your way to close out 2022 and have big plans for 2023, and you're not going to want to miss it. I hope you all have a kick-ass week. Stay safe out there, and until next time, make every weld better than your last.